And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Katharine Hepburn. Thank you for listening. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
All right, how are you?
Good, thanks. Because I've been reading Me.
It's very self-indulgent.
Me, Stories of My Life by Katharine Hepburn.
Yes, that's funny. I hadn't thought about that, but it's very me. It's a me book, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And she's
that sort of person.
a me person.
Isn't she?
Yeah. But she says a couple of times throughout it how selfish she is.
Yeah.
I mean, she's never had children, and I think she attributes that to being selfish and not having the time. Well, no, she just is responsible enough to know that
she wouldn't be there for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Good. More famous people should read this book. So, tell me about you and your life with Katharine Hepburn. Are you a fan?
I like her, yeah, I do like her. Something about her. She's very strong. I think the first autobiography I ever read was Lauren Bacall's years ago. Her and Bogey were really great mates with Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. She talked about them a lot coming round. There are four of them, just evenings together. And she sounds so nice. They sound like a nice bunch of people. She doesn't mention that, hanging out with them, but she's got a lot to talk about, so...
She does have a lot to talk about, and she certainly does it in her own way.
Yes. How did you feel about her before?
Oh, I know her, that she's a massive icon of cinema, and I know that she's brilliant, and I've seen a handful of her films, I guess. I mean, most of her films are from that era, almost just after the silent movies,
yes.
aren't they?
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's making films in the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah.
But, you know, things like Bringing Up Baby I've seen. There's a brilliant film. And some of the later stuff, like Lion in Winter, is just phenomenal. You would love it.
I'd love most of these films.
But just her as a person, I like that she's in the... I like that she was in the world. I like her character. I like that she doesn't conform. Yeah, I like that she went against the grain of the Hollywood starlet thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And she does everything on her own terms, and that includes writing this book in her own way, which I found quite difficult to read.
Yeah, I'm going to have to admit, she writes it like she's talking. Sometimes she goes, oh, and it was, yes,
Yeah. ...
And you're like, okay, this might be quite charming if you're in an interview, but this is a book. And it's quite stumbling to read, isn't it? It doesn't flow properly. She
should have worked with a ghostwriter. I'm assuming she didn't. If they did, they should be fired.
I'm going to say there's no way she wrote with anybody. I would also say that she's so supremely confident that she probably wouldn't think she needs help with anything.
Well, I mean, in one respect, she kind of doesn't, because I bet this book sold 1 million.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Which would just confirm her own book writing abilities back to herself.
Yes.
But in terms of reading it, and we've read a lot now, it was quite difficult in places to keep up with that. Plus, she's all over the place. But in her defence, in the prologue at the very beginning, she does actually say, apologies, this book will be all over the place, because that's how my mind is. One story will trigger another, and in the middle of one story I'll start another.
Yeah.
Which is all well and good, but it makes it quite difficult to read.
Yeah.
And probably to remember as we go through this podcast.
Yes.
So we may be as equally all over the place as Katharine Hepburn is in writing this book.
True.
Should we get on with it?
Yes.
Katharine. She's Katharine.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Her mum was Katharine too.
Oh.
But I mean, you say Catherine, obviously, but I've never known a Catherine spelt with an A in the middle.
Good point.
Katharine Hepburn was born in 1907.
It's quite a while ago, this one.
Yeah, and do you know what? When she talks about her childhood, it's weird, because we're usually imagining stuff in the 30s, 40s and 50s. This is right back at the end of the Victorian era.
Yes.
It's proper.
Not that they had a Victorian era in America.
No,
I don't know what they call their eras.
No, they would still
Is
call
it
them...
presidents? Is it like the Roosevelt era? Or...
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe
they just call it 1907.
Maybe. Early 1900s.
Yeah.
Tell you what I love about this book. It was a relief that she loved her parents so much, and her parents loved her and her siblings, and they all nurtured each other. It's just such a relief, because usually these books are filled with childhood trauma.
I know.
It's like, oh my God, thank God, it was so nice to read about this family that just loved each other and wanted the best for their children.
And they're the coolest parents.
Yeah, aren't they? Hey?
She has the coolest parents. They're not just loving, they are amazing. They were very well educated, both of them. A teacher and a doctor. They had 6 kids over 15 years, and she was the second. But anyway, they were both reformers. Dad worked on reforming healthcare in really unpopular areas like sexual diseases, prostitution, birth control and black rights. It covered all the most unpopular, untalked about areas, which made them ostracised in society until the time, they were like ahead of their time, until the time caught up and then people realised they were heroes. So they went from being ostracised to being really revered. Mm-hmm. Good on them, they stuck it out.
Yeah, I mean, because while her dad is doing that, Mum's out campaigning for the women's right to vote.
Yeah.
So the ones who agree with them think they're brilliant, but actually at that time, 1907, most of society is still not thinking that far ahead. Exactly. And a lot of people don't want it. They don't care about the sexual health of women and stuff.
Or prostitutes.
And Mum and Dad were both very much at the forefront of getting those laws changed.
Yeah, it is amazing. The mum ran the suffragette branch of Connecticut, and they had Emmeline Pankhurst at their house.
Yeah,
you know.
And Margaret Sanger. They would just drop in for tea. Yeah. I mean, this is who little Katharine Hepburn is growing up with these people in her house.
Yeah.
And when she's like 7, 8 years old, her mum will have the stall at every fair or every fete in town. Mum's got a woman's rights stall with the suffragette colour balloons, and little Katharine at 8 years old is going around with the balloons saying votes for women and stuff. I love reading it. Yeah.
It makes so much sense of why she's so strong and not a normal woman. She's been brought up to believe in herself.
That she's as good as a man.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
really key in this.
And of course she ends up getting labelled a lesbian a lot.
Of course,
she loves wearing trousers, she's got a deep voice, she's confident. But those can be women's traits as well. Guess what? It doesn't make you have to be gay. But she could be if she wanted. I wouldn't even care. That's how cool they are. Reformers. It's brilliant. And you know, her mum started running that in 1917 and they got the votes in 1920. Yeah. Not saying it's her who did it, but they really pushed it to succeed.
Yeah, she went from the Connecticut Suffrage Association to then the National Women's Party. So she was a real groundbreaker, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And the real forefront. Well, they both were, Mum and Dad.
And she said that her mum would always say, do it, and would always say yes, but then come back and tell me about it. That was like their rules. They had no rules other than, just try it.
What's nice is that Katharine and her brothers and sisters, and this is a quote from the book, and Katharine says, "What luck to be born out of love and to live in an atmosphere of warmth and interest." Oh, made my heart sing.
Yeah.
Because we have not had that in a book yet.
It's very rare. I know.
Yeah. And all through this book, I mean, we'll discover just the confidence of the woman.
I know.
And she also, admittedly, the selfishness of her. And I kind of think, if she was a man, would she be calling herself selfish? It's just she's been brought up to know women are as good as men and women should be independent. Women should go out and get what they want. And she absolutely does behave professionally like a man. And we'll get to it.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, she's a real product of her environment. I think she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's really cool.
Yeah. And I think that's why she kind of does get shunned. And even at the height of her fame, she becomes unpopular with the public because she's ahead of her time.
True.
Anyway, she's still 8.
Yeah, she's still 8. Whilst her mum's saying, yes, do it, her dad's really encouraging as well, and he's really athletic, and he always came home at 4:30 and spent time with his kids, playing with them, set things up like a zip wire, like the first ever zip wire between a tree and the house. They had a lot of land, they had a nice big house.
Yeah.
They had a nurse and a cook. They were making money somehow, being liberal reformists.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the same nurse and cook till death. So it's nice, you know, they weren't sacking everyone. There was a lot of love for everybody going around.
What surprised me is when Katharine goes to school, she actually complains that there's too many girls there. And I kind of thought, that's weird coming from such a feminist household. And then when I thought about it, I thought, it's because the girls at school aren't up to date with the progressive thinking. So she probably wasn't complaining about the girls as such, but probably the mindset of the girls at school that come from all over different places weren't on the same level as Katharine. And so she probably just thought there's too many people there she can't connect with. And unfortunately, they were the women, because they were girls. The messages hadn't got through to them yet. So she did become more of a boy, if you like.
Tomboy sort of thing. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, I mean, they go to good schools, right? Both mum and dad are highly educated. Like, after mum had Tom and Katharine, the two older children, she then started campaigning more because Mum had a master's degree.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she did essentially start a family. And then after Katharine was born, thought, oh, I've got a master's degree, I should be doing something with it. And that's when they started campaigning and stuff. And then they had 4 more children a couple of years after. So it was Tom and Katharine. And then there was a bit of a gap. And then they had 4 more siblings who were a little bit younger.
And that explains why it was just the 2 of them who'd gone to stay at the aunt's house in New York.
Yeah, I think Tom's about 16 and Katharine, she's a couple of years younger, right?
16 and a half and Katharine's 14, yeah. And so they went on their own to stay with this aunt, and she'd taken them to see a play that evening.
Yeah.
So they'd had a really nice time. And in the morning, Katharine had gone up to her brother's room and found him hanging and dead.
God, it's horrific.
And it does seem that he killed himself. There's no other real explanation, although she still thinks it's a mystery because she can't understand why. But then people don't always express themselves at all.
I know it does. It was, oh God, this really, when I was reading this, it was horrifying. And she also says that her dad blames himself because he was talking with Tom about this trick that this guy used to do where he would pretend he'd hung himself, and he did it by tilting his neck or something. And so his dad always felt incredibly guilty about it. But I just kind of wondered whether that was his way of just not admitting that his 16-year-old son did actually end his own life for whatever reason.
For whatever reason was going on in his head that he must have kept from everybody.
16.
Because they had no idea. Yeah, and obviously finding the body is really horrific.
And then she says when she ran out of the house, she knew that her aunt wouldn't be able to cope with it.
Yeah.
So she didn't tell her. She ran out of the house. She knew there was a doctor across the road. She knocked on the door. The doctor's wife answered. And Katharine says, my brother's dead. And then the wife said, well, you don't need the doctor then. And she shut the door on her. I mean, shocking. Anyway, then there was another woman who they thought of as an aunt who was nearby. Katharine ran to get her as she came back to the house. But oh my word, Katharine says, this incident seemed to sort of separate me from the world as I'd known it. Yeah. I mean, it's not surprising, is it?
No.
Horrific.
And it changed her. There was a real before and after.
Yeah.
And she felt isolated because she'd known tragedy and other kids her age hadn't.
And like we're saying, she already felt different from the girls at school anyway.
Yeah.
But now she'd experienced this and she's connecting with no one.
No, so she's only about 14 and she basically left school around that time. Mm-hmm. She just couldn't deal with it with other people. And she took up tutoring, so she's really clever. So yeah, not being tutored, tutoring. Yeah. And then anyway, they talk about these summers they spent in this place called Fenwick, which is in the mouth of the Connecticut River. It's about 45 miles away from their home. So they bought this house. They really were quite well off, weren't they? They were. It's just like farmland by a river. Just absolutely idyllic, spend your summers there. And they were really sporty age. She was playing golf from the age of 5.
Yes.
She says, I'm really good at golf. I can only imagine she is. And swimming, and her dad had got a diving board put in for everybody to use. They're just brilliant. And they were having a great time. Very athletic, very healthy.
But she was also naughty because when she was at the house in Fenwick, she was hooking up with this other girl who lived nearby, and they would go around breaking into the other houses.
Oh, yeah.
And getting caught, right?
When we're saying breaking in, we mean finding a way in, like a cracked window that was open and things like that.
Is that not breaking in?
Well,
I mean, they're not supposed to be there. It's somebody else's house.
Yeah, they were doing no harm and they weren't stealing anything. Apart from, I think, one time when they couldn't get in, so they did break in. I think that might be the time they got caught. They're just
kids.
Cheeky.
Just kids.
Nobody got hurt. And anyway, that family house, in 1938, a hurricane came along and blew the entire house away. And it was like 15 minutes before they got out of it. They got out of a back window and run up the hill and went into this other house. I think they might have broken into that one. And watched from there. They watched their entire house set off and float down the river in its entirety.
That must be so surreal.
Completely nuts. Yeah. Never to be seen again. Yeah. So yeah, they built another one. And to this day, her brother lives there and she visits all the time. It's her second home.
Well, not anymore. She's dead.
Damn.
To this day.
To this day, she's dead.
To this day that she wrote this. To the day that she wrote this book.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's right. This book was published in 1991. She was 84. And I did look it up. She lived till about 97 or something. Yeah. Which that's what you get for being a healthy, well brought up person. Yeah.
So she went to Bryn Mawr College, which is pretty famous, right? That's
completely Welsh, that is.
Yes.
But in Mawr, I've forgotten what it means, but it's like probably like Pleasant Hill or something.
Mm-hmm. So she went there in 1925 and she stayed the duration. She went because her mum wanted her to go, but in the end she ended up really loving it and learning.
It took her about a year to settle in. She was really staying away from everyone for the first year.
But she did get kicked out in the end, didn't she? For smoking in her room.
Oh, well, she got suspended until her dad wrote that letter.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah, she got through a year of pretty much avoiding everyone and then made one friend. They went off to Europe in the summer together.
Oh, yeah.
They bought a car, drove around England, Wales and Scotland, went all the way to Paris, sold the car for more than they bought it for. Proper adventures.
Yeah. That's the confidence she has.
Total, yeah. It's an upper class confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
By the second year, she'd settled in and she made friends and she started acting in plays.
Here we are.
And she said she had short hair and she looked like a man. She wore trousers and she played man's parts. So that's the beginning of...
It's probably pretty radical back in 1925 to be short-haired and wearing trousers, do you think?
Because like in the Art Deco period, the 20s, no, that's when it started coming in, isn't it? That whole thing where women...
Yeah, but I don't think lots of women did it.
No, you're right. It became a bit of a fashion, so it would be only the confident upper-class people that probably took that on. Your ordinary people weren't probably any part of that.
Yeah, I imagine if you're at Bryn Mawr, probably 2 women wear trousers and have short hair, don't they?
I'm sure she stood out, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's tall, athletic, and a boyish haircut with a beautiful face.
So she's at Bryn Mawr and she graduates. And she's made friends with this guy called Jack, who's friends with a man called Edwin Knopf.
Yeah.
And he's got a theatre company in Baltimore.
Yeah.
She drove all the way over to see him because she wanted to further her acting when she left Bryn Mawr. Yeah. And he says, great, write me a letter when you're done. But she says her dad said to her, if you want anything done, you don't write a letter, you go and see them in person. So when she had finished, she drove her car to the theatre where Edwin Knopf's theatre company was, and they were doing something. So she sat at the back of the auditorium watching, and she said at the end of the session, he walked up through the theatre, he saw her, and he said, oh, it's you. Report for rehearsals, 11 o'clock on Monday.
Yes, right place, right time.
And then she said that when she went to rehearsals, it was quite a big company, a few other women were there, and she ended up with the biggest part, which made me wonder about how they used to cast things in those days. If you have a theatre company, do you just all get together and then wait and see who's there and assign the parts?
Maybe when it's a repertory theatre company, because you're doing one play a week, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
So maybe then you just... Not normally, no. I wouldn't have thought. But I bet it was a rep. So she was only in... I think she did a couple of plays and then somebody said to her, you should study...
your voice.
Yeah. She straight away went, you're right. So she left that theatre company and moved to New York.
Yeah.
And took up being tutored. Yeah. She lived there and got taught breathing and diaphragm work and all that sort of essential stuff.
And then Edwin Knopf from the Baltimore Theatre Company had been having success and he decided to bring a play to New York. And it was kind of a semi-big deal because Kenneth McKenna was in it. And it was called The Big Pond. Because Katharine was in New York, he asked her to come and understudy the female lead. 1 week later, I think it didn't work out with the actress that they'd chosen for the lead. They were unhappy with her. So Katharine got upgraded to the female lead. So she's playing opposite Kenneth McKenna. But in the book, she says, well, of course I was.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, in the book, she kind of makes fun of herself and her confidence at the time. Every time she gets a lucky break, she says, well, of course that would happen. Yeah. I'm brilliant. But you see, she is an unproven actress at this point. She's in New York playing opposite Kenneth McKenna. And she actually said, I was the star of the play. Kenneth McKenna thought I was his leading lady. But actually, no, he was my leading man. Yeah. So she goes on. And I think she first comes out and makes the audience laugh as she gets even more confident. And she starts talking way too fast. Nobody can understand her. And then within a week, she's fired. She's fired.
This actually happens to her quite a lot. She's basically learning in plain sight. She's learning on the job. No wonder she's a bit crap for ages.
The amounts of time she's getting fired.
Yeah, no. It's more than anyone I've ever heard of.
Yeah, but she keeps going. And I guess that's the key, isn't it? Because she's confident.
She's beautiful and
she thinks like a man.
Yes.
Every time she keeps going after a knockback, I think to myself, this is actually what a man would do. And if it was a man, you wouldn't think anything of it.
Yeah, she's not over emotional.
Yeah.
She really deals with things with her brain.
Yep, she's totally been brought up to know that women are as good as men in the way that men just keep going on regardless of ability and stuff. Well, actually, Katharine does have the ability.
Well, she gains the ability. She might not have had it at first.
It's true.
By the way, when she was hanging out with that bloke, Jack Clark, he lived next door to the university or near it, and he had a cottage, and they used to go there for parties, and there was men and women. One of them took photos of her naked on the sofa there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting because it really does show you another side to her that is really confident in her body. And she kept the photos just knocking around so people could just see them. Yeah,
she said they went missing.
Yeah.
And she kind of thinks it's after this one guy did come and asked to look at them. And then she said they kind of just got mislaid after that point. What I find astonishing
They've never gone viral.
They've never surfaced.
No.
You never hear of naked pictures of Katharine Hepburn. Marilyn Monroe, everybody knows
they get
about
out.
her naked pictures. And you would assume, because Katharine Hepburn is as big as Marilyn Monroe, that if there were naked pictures out there...
You know what? Whoever nicked them probably just lost them in a move or something, you know.
It's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, she's that confident.
So she's fired from this play, The Big Pond, and then she immediately gets 2 calls from other play producers who actually saw her that night and want her, and they both said the audience just didn't get you, but you were great. And then already she's deciding which play. She gets a really good offer, but they want to tie her into a contract. Every step that she's getting really good offers that any other jobbing actress would snap their hands off. Yeah. And she's standing back and going, actually, this isn't right for me at the moment. I'm going to do the play I want to do rather than the job opportunity.
Yeah, I do wonder if that's another thing of confidence of just knowing that you will eat. If everything fell down, you just go back to your parents and they'll look after you. But she actually did have the pressure of, even though her parents are brilliant, her dad didn't want her to be an actor. He really didn't. When she went to train, he really reluctantly said he'd fund it. And she only convinced him by saying, look, whatever I do in life, you want me to be good at it. If I'm going to be good at it, I need to train. So she did have the pressure to think she's got to succeed.
Also, as brilliant as her mum and dad were, she doesn't get the acting thing from either of them, because she said that her mum went to the cinema with them once. Her mum didn't like films, but she did take the kids to the cinema. And her mum laughed so much that she was asked to leave.
Yeah, because it wasn't a comedy.
It wasn't a comedy. She was laughing at the absurdity of people pretending to do stuff on the screen. Yeah. She was asked to leave. Some children would sit there with their mum. That would be a real negative thing. Oh, I better not go into acting. Yeah. But somehow, 2 really untheatrical parents, and Katharine Hepburn comes through there.
I'll tell you what, they're reformers. So I bet they had to do speeches all the time to stir up the crowd and sell what they were selling. So that probably was part of it.
So she gets another theatre job, and actually she's good and she gets good reviews, but it shuts early. And then she's offered another job understudying an actress called Hope Williams in a play called Holiday. Now she does that for 2 weeks, and there's this guy Luddy, whose name was Oswald Ludlow. Was it
Ludlow
Oswald?
Ogden Smith.
She made him change his name to Ogden Ludlow because when they got married, she didn't want to be Kate Smith, thought it was boring. So she made him change his name from Smith, but she calls him Luddy. After 2 weeks of being in this understudying job, she marries Luddy and she quits the job.
Yeah.
2 weeks later,
bored.
She's back doing the understudying job.
Yeah, go on honeymoon to Bermuda. And then she got bored.
And that's the one and only time she got married, right? Even though she had relationships with other people, and she realised that she was not the marrying kind. Yeah.
She was on $125 a week in that job, which is a nice tidy wage.
Yeah, but that's another thing with her. When somebody offers her a job, she'll go in and say, well, I want $125. I think the first time she gets a job on a film, says, oh, I'll need $1,500 a week. And that's like, this is your first job. Nobody gets that. But she gets it.
Yeah.
So, she was sacked from her first job opposite Kenneth McKenna, The Big Pond. She was sacked from it. But they kept her photos outside the theatre as it continued to run. A man from Paramount Pictures was walking past the theatre and he saw the photographs of Katharine Hepburn, and he got in touch with her and he says, would you like to come and do a screen test? And she says, oh, well, I've not really thought about it. I won't at the moment, but if I think I'll do that in the future, I'll definitely give you a call. It's just like, what? Why is she not saying, yes, I would love to?
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's on her terms,
yeah,
isn't it?
She's powerful.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of like nonchalance that she has probably makes her really attractive to people, actually, because she's not eager and stuff. It makes her interesting, doesn't it?
I think people either love her or hate her, which is why she got tarnished with the box office poison thing for a while.
Then one night she's at the theatre. I think this is also an appearance thing. She's just hanging out at the theatre going to see a play, and then this guy approaches her and says, "Oh, are you in anything?" And she goes, "Well, I'm not, but I'd like to be." And he says, "Well, come and join the theatre guild." That was purely because of what she looked like. He approached her in the theatre and just assumed she was an actress. I guess it's because she is tall, dressing in pants, short hair, whatever. She's standing out, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, so that was good. She went there and got a part in a play with the Lunts, who were massively famous. And it was Death Takes a Holiday. And she took that part, and it was a hit play, but she got roasted and fired.
Yeah.
Again,
then she gets another understudy. She at this moment, she gets a series of parts, and there's a really good quote. She says that I'm really good at getting jobs. I'm just not very good at keeping them. She says she can walk into a room, boil something up out of nothing, and really charm everyone. Reading a book by one of the most successful actors of all time, I was so surprised to find how many times she was fired.
Right, if you think about it, that first job she got was a rep. She played 2 weeks in 2 plays and then left to get trained. If she'd have stuck that out, you know how many actors get trained in rep and they do all the different parts, and it really is their beginning. Mm-hmm. She didn't put that groundwork in. Mm-hmm. So this is almost like her doing weekly rep, but on Broadway. And she hasn't learned to be an actor. She's learning it on Broadway. And she's not ready.
And she's rarely, because she's on Broadway, of course, she's getting the press in and stuff. Yeah. And she's getting proper reviews and proper newspapers. She's not good enough to be
there. But of course, she looks amazing, sounds amazing, holds herself well, and is getting the jobs that she isn't an actor yet. She won't have the stagecraft.
I love that in one of the plays that closes, she's got a really good review for it. Yeah. And then they said to her, "Oh, there's no job at the end of the week." And what do you mean? I'm not fired. They said, "No, the show's closing." She's really mystified. She's like, "Well, why is the show closing?" They said, "Have you not read the reviews?" And she likes, "Well, I read that I was really good." But she never bothered reading the rest of the reviews. So she had no idea that the play was really poorly received, because she only read the sentence that said Katharine Hepburn was amazing. And then she's like, "Well, why is this play closing if I'm so good?" I love the confidence of the woman. It's amazing. But you're right. Alongside all of this and all these full starts, she is actually learning her
to be an actor. Yeah, it's a real high start, but it's probably not advisable. Because the next job she gets, she said her parents actually made sure they came to opening night in case she got fired. They kept missing her. We'll wait and come to press night. No. Yeah, she got a job in Stockbridge Theatre Company, which was a sort of summer stock, I think. But she left because she got bored and went to spend a summer in Fenwick swimming and playing golf. I mean, it's not a good work ethic, is it?
No, it's not.
She's a leading lady in Hollywood. She just didn't know it, but some part of her did. Mm-hmm. She couldn't really be bothered to put in the groundwork, I guess.
Then in 1931, so what is she at this point, 24?
Oh, there's one before that. She got a part in The Art and Mrs. Bottle, but the leading man found her unattractive, so she got fired.
Wow.
Yeah. But then they couldn't find anyone else in short notice, so she got rehired and she demanded more money and got it. And it was a massive hit.
Wow. So she is getting hits.
Yeah.
And then she gets this, she knows this playwright who's written a play called Animal Kingdom, and it's opposite Leslie Howard, who's an established actor. She goes and does that play, but again, she's fired.
Because he didn't like her.
He didn't like her, but actually when she protested against that, the producer said to her, "Well, actually, you also weren't very good." So it's like, she's still not very good.
You can't believe this person would have got anywhere.
Why she kept going.
It's a book of a failed actor thus far, isn't it? Yeah.
And also, this is another thing which blows my mind. So in the book, she really lauds Spencer Tracy's acting. Yeah. And she says, "It's only ever been Spencer Tracy and Laurette Taylor as actors. They take you to somewhere else entirely." So we know that she loves Laurette Taylor as an actress. She gets a job in a play called Alice Sit by the Fire opposite Laurette Taylor, right? Amazing. She gets that part. And then a play called The Warrior's Husband comes up. And 1 week into rehearsal, she thinks, I'd rather do The Warrior's Husband. So she quits from the play with Lorette Taylor. It's just like the decisions she makes. You would think everybody in the industry hates her at this point.
Yeah, you'd think she'd be black marked, what do you call it? Yeah.
But she takes The Warrior's Husband, and that's her first proper bona fide big hit.
Actually, yeah, apparently it's sort of quite well known. She describes it, she bounds down these stairs. She's in this amazing outfit. This picture of it is armour and very short, and her amazing long legs are out, which is a good excuse because she's this like goddess.
Yeah.
She bounds down the stairs with a stag over her shoulder. That's really legendary, apparently. And she kneels down, throws the stag at the feet of Hippolyta, and got a round of applause every single time. That's what made her famous. And the agents and movies were a-calling straight after that.
So she was right to give up the play with Lorette
Taylor.
Yeah,
she was.
Yeah. And it's from that, then, her first proper big hit. It's from that entrance, really. I mean, how amazing that even your entrance as an actress gets a round of applause. And then she gets a call from the film studio saying there's a film called A Bill of Divorcement.
David Selznick and George Cukor were calling.
George Cukor is in this a lot. She has a good relationship with him for many years. And this is a film starring John Barrymore, who we know is the biggest deal in films at this time.
A legend, and the granddad of Drew Barrymore, although they never met.
Yeah. So she's got her foot in the door now in movies.
Yeah. She did a test.
With an eye patch on.
Oh, yeah, because she turned up in Hollywood. They'd got the train there, and her and her friend, Laura, they'd gone together, and they'd stood out to look at the amazing steam train curling round the mountains, and she got 3 bits of iron stuck in her eye. They were there for 3 days on that journey, and they were met at the station and taken straight to the studios. They cut her hair, they put her in clothes, they were doing sketches for costumes. George Cukor was there, John Barrymore was there, all with this bit in her eye that was swollen and really painful. At the end of the night, it was dark, and they went out to the car park, and there was one man there, and she just went, "Excuse me, do you know an eye doctor?" And he took her in the middle of the night. They pulled out these iron bits out of her eye. And then, the next day she did a test with an eye patch on. And still got the job.
A screen test for a major studio with an eye patch.
I guess she carried herself as a star. Right, the whole way through it.
So she gets this job with John Barrymore, who she liked and she had a good relationship with, right? But then one day he said to her, "Come to my trailer." I don't know, go over some lines or whatever, and she knocks on the door. I love the way she tells it. She says she goes in and he's led there on the sofa in a state of comparative disarray. And then she said she just stood there with a blank expression, which obviously told him nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And she said he really fumbled and then said, "Okay, well, all right, we'll see you later." Now, we've just read Errol Flynn's book, and this exact same story is in his book. But he actually tells it with Katharine Hepburn being more shocked and screaming "what" at him. But she probably wouldn't be.
No, actually, she doesn't seem like somebody who would have an emotional reaction to that.
She wouldn't be fazed.
No, she wouldn't be fazed.
So anyway, look, A Bill of Divorcement is a reasonably successful film, isn't it? Yeah. And then she gets a film called Morning Glory, for which she wins her first Academy Award.
Amazing.
So soon in her film, I think it's her third or fourth film.
Yeah, it was with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Great mates of Charlie Chaplin. It's all tying in.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And that was shot in 17 days and she got an Academy Award for it. See, like in those days with Charlie Chaplin, they just knocked the films out really quick, didn't they? Amazing.
She never went to the ceremony to pick it up. And she's won 4 Oscars to this day, and she never went to pick any of them.
Yeah, she said she didn't believe she'd win, and she didn't want the embarrassment of sitting there when someone else won. She was so convinced she wouldn't win.
I don't think any other actor in history yet has 4 Best Actor, Actress Oscars. It's still her.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, Academy Award, of course. Now she's really running. And then she gets Little Women, the film, the first one.
George Cukor was directing some of these.
1933. So she's only been in the film industry, a year. She's done 5 films and won an Oscar.
Amazing.
Yeah. Especially because her stage career
was crap. Mostly. Mostly.
But then, as a favour, she goes back on the stage. She has this friend called Jed, right?
Jed Harris,
who she feels like she owes something to, or she just doing him a favour. They came up together, didn't they?
Yeah, she said that he was a very successful producer, but he was on his way down and she was on her way up. So she felt she owed him.
And she agreed to be in it, this play called The Lake. And Helen Hayes said to Katharine Hepburn, she warned her off working with Jed. She said, do not let him direct you. He will dismantle your confidence. Well, that didn't matter because he wasn't actually directing the play. He was producing it. But he fired the director and he ended up directing it. And sure enough, he
dismantled her confidence.
Yeah, but how? She is the most confident woman who ever...
That takes some doing, doesn't it? But he did things like made her play the piano in the middle of a scene. Right, so she had dialogue and had to play the piano, and she can't play the piano. And he insisted she learn to play the piano. That is absolutely dreadful. I mean, that's a terrible thing to make somebody do.
And then he stopped rehearsals, even though everybody was woefully under-rehearsed. He then just decided rehearsals were done, wouldn't work with her. They started it outside of New York City, just the previews or whatever. But it was due to open in New York City, and she actually says it was like a slow, long walk to the gallows.
Yeah.
It's just like they all knew they were not good enough.
No, and he destroyed her in rehearsals as well.
Yeah.
Totally shattered her confidence.
She absolutely got roasted.
Yeah, because it was actually crap.
And they were losing something like $1,200 a week in box office sales, which was a lot of money in those days.
Oh, there's a build-up to this. Because when they were talking about doing this play... He said to her, look, you take everybody to Fenwick for the weekends. Why don't you take me? She said, all right, I've no problem with taking you. You're most welcome. So she drove them down for the weekend and they were playing golf and having fun. And then on the second day, Luddy joined them down there. And by this time, by the way, Luddy and her had separated. She basically says when she went to Hollywood, it kind of was the end of them, really. But he was always supporting her. He was absolutely her best friend. And she admits that she probably used him a bit. In fact, she said in writing this book, I realised I used him too much.
Oh, she calls herself a pig for the way she treated him.
Yeah, the therapy of the book writing again. But anyway, when they were there, they were having breakfast on the last morning, and her mum said, oh, how did you like Catherine's husband, Luddy? And he had no idea that was her husband, even though they'd all been playing golf together and stuff. And on the drive on the way back, he says, why did you not tell me you were married? She said, well, you didn't ask. And I do believe in her way that she really didn't even think to, because she's just not very sensitive. You didn't ask. I don't know if you're married. I didn't ask you. And he obviously thought that there was something potentially romantic going on there. And I think he felt slighted.
Right.
So I think that could be... Well, not just I think. She writes about that and then tells us this. So I think...
That's
without
why she
saying
did it.
Exactly, that could have been the reason that it's implied. She said years later, Leyland, the agent, bumped into this bloke, Jed. And Jed confessed to Leyland, I tried to destroy Katharine. He said that. He actually said those words. He deliberately tried to destroy her.
Well, because she was still under contract for the play, which was going terribly, and then she thought, well, as soon as New York is over, it's over. But he transferred it to Chicago, and it was in her contract that she would have to do that.
Yeah.
So she phoned him up and just said, how do I get out of this? And he says, you have to pay the money. So she paid him $13,675.75 to get out of that
She
job.
said to him, you can take my whole life savings, everything I have, and that's how much money she had. She cleaned it out and paid it him to not open in Chicago, and he took the money.
Years later, he sent her the money back and a check, and she ripped it up. She said, I don't want it, it's sad money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she was probably all right.
She was minted by then. But I get that in principle she wouldn't take it as well, because she's better than that. She's better than him.
Jed Harris, eh?
Well, yeah, it's really, that's pretty disgraceful.
So this just goes to show that a lot of the times in her career, she's having pretty rough rides, actually, and she is getting... So she's a big film star at this point.
Yeah, she said she was a laughingstock in that play, but it sold out because she was famous, because some film star who's right at the top of her game is in a play. You can go and see her and laugh at her because she's crap. Could have destroyed her.
Wow.
Oh, bad.
Then Margaret Mitchell actually sends her the manuscript for Gone with the Wind. Katharine Hepburn loved it, but she knew she wasn't right for it. But the producers kept her on hold because they couldn't find the actress to play Scarlett O'Hara. Yeah. And right up until the day, she had a clause in her contract that she would be available right up until the day it starts filming. She had all the costumes measured for her. Everything was ready to go. And in the end, they decided to look for unknown actresses.
Right.
And they just plucked Vivien Leigh, like the day before filming, and A Star Is Born. Yeah. But that was very, very nearly Katharine Hepburn.
A totally different film, and probably not quite the magic that it was. I'm saying that, I've never actually seen it.
No, neither have I. But I can't imagine that. I mean, she's not that character, is she? The character that I imagine, even though I've never seen it
Same
already.
Here. You feel like you've seen it, don't you? Yeah.
But I guess it's because the whole imagery of that film is like Rhett Butler standing over Scarlett O'Hara and stuff. She's not submissive, is what I'm saying.
Yes, she's not.
Whereas
she's too strong.
Yeah, and she's taller than Clark Gable.
Yeah.
She'd have been standing over Clark Gable
and
he'd have been
holding
back
him,
in the embrace.
him.
It's a whole different film.
But there's so many other people. It's weird they went for like Judy Garland's knocking around at the time.
But Judy Garland is unreliable at this point,
she is,
because she talks about her in this book.
She does. She talks about these parties that George Cukor had, and they were so close. In fact, I think she lived for years in the cottage on the grounds of George Cukor's house. It was his cottage. She really describes this fantastic house with all these artworks and these parties. That would be people like Judy Garland, Ethel Barrymore was a regular, Fanny Bryce, Edith Sitwell, Gregory Peck. It's like the royalty of
cream of
cinema.
Society, yeah. Oh my God.
And then she talks about once she was sat between Stravinsky and Groucho Marx, and Groucho Marx wouldn't shut up, but she was trying to have this really good chat to Stravinsky about the lyra birds in Australia. Have you ever heard them sing? And he hadn't, but he really wanted to because he was working on this symphony. And meanwhile, Groucho Marx is in her other ear. She's like, shut up, Groucho. I want to talk to Stravinsky. As if that happens to you.
Stravinsky's come up in another book we've had recently.
It was Quincy Jones's mentor of classical music that said that Quincy Jones and Stravinsky were the most important musicians that have ever lived.
And what I find amazing about Stravinsky is I imagine he lived 250 years ago.
Yeah.
But he's actually contemporary with
I know, I agree.
Hollywood.
He's like Mozart.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we might be a bit ignorant. But yeah, he's so legendary. He's up there with the classical people. Yeah. You imagine he's in a white wig and the funny trousers and things like that.
Yes. So her marriage to Luddy is over, and she's got a lot of male admirers. And she does date Leyland the agent, right?
Yeah, there's another nice picture of them together in this book.
Oh, because she said that the captions on the pictures when they appeared in the newspapers often would say that Leyland is Luddy.
That's right.
Yeah, they did look quite similar, I thought.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Handsome.
Then, before we get to Spencer Tracy, perhaps her most famous suitor would be Howard Hughes.
That's right. Well, she was with Leyland for 4 years, so that was a substantial relationship. But yeah, Howard Hughes was 3 years, because lots of people dabbled with that man, but they didn't have a proper relationship with him.
And I love the fact that she was in films with Cary Grant, and Cary Grant knew Howard Hughes, and I think he kind of floated the idea with Katharine Hepburn, Howard Hughes would like to take you to dinner, and she just is not interested in him. And one day they were at a picnic in a field or something.
I think Howard Hughes actually lands his plane in the field next to the filming, which disrupted
So they're
the filming.
And then Katharine Hepburn's like, who the hell is this? And then she realises it's Howard Hughes. Yes, she's mad that Cary Grant has just said, just come along because you'll get to meet her. So she was really kind of against getting to know him.
Yeah, she said she didn't even look at him once when they first had a meal.
Right, yeah.
And then he turned up when she was playing golf, and she thought, he's persistent. And he just kept following her until she caved in.
Mm. But they seem to have a kind of legitimate, respectful relationship, right?
Yeah,
they hung out for years, and he taught her to fly. And
I think they had a lot of fun together. Some really nice pictures of them again.
Yeah.
Them just living it up.
Yeah.
A lot of adventure. She doesn't want to be tied down. She's not a domesticated person. She loves adventures and freedom and golf and, just playing. And that's what she seems to find in these blokes.
Mm-hmm.
None of these people want to settle down. They don't want her to settle down. Mind you, they want to marry her because Leyland Hayward, the agent, he really wanted to marry her. And they were together for 4 years and she kept saying no. Eventually, he went to New York for a play with Margaret Sullivan in, and he took her on as a client and then married her.
Right.
And then he cabled her from New York and said, I've just got married to Margaret Sullivan. She's absolutely gutted. And her mum's saying, why are you upset? You didn't want him. But what she does is she wants all these men to be completely in love with her and do everything for her. But she doesn't want to be tied down.
Yeah, she doesn't want the formality of marriage. Which, let's be honest, in the 1950s, you do get married.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Yeah.
Especially when you're being photographed a lot and you're flying everyone doing this and that. Yeah, it's very unconventional. It's a liberated female.
I think as well, this is what she talks a lot about, the public going off her a lot. And I think it's this kind of behaviour. She's not behaving like a woman should. She should be getting married.
And having children. Yeah. And she's being photographed with these blokes. Yeah. And if you think that's okay, then you're encouraging society to break down.
Yeah.
You know.
And I bet it wasn't reported nicely in the papers either.
No.
You know, they're not saying, oh, look at Katharine Hepburn going off with this.
Having a lovely time and freedom. Yeah, you're really
and
challenging.
I think as much as lots of women would look at that and admire it, at the time, everybody's so indoctrinated at that time.
Yeah, and they'd be jealous too because they're stuck at home with the kids. Yeah, you're right.
So she's with Howard Hughes. Oh, and then, I guess just by the nature of working with studios and stuff, she gets a run of what she calls really dull films.
Yeah.
And so she goes off the boil a bit.
Well, yeah, it's this time when she's called box office poison by the press, who are also calling Joan Crawford and Marlene Dietrich box office poison.
Well, she's in good company then, isn't she?
She is. Yeah, she is. But it's hard to get past that when they label you.
It's funny because even Fred Astaire was at one point. Well, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers together were labelled box office poison.
It's nasty, isn't it?
I wonder if there's just this thing of it being essential to the industry, where the people who've been making the money for 4 or 5 years, you have to go off them so the new ones can come up. And then these people who are labelled box office poison do generally come back when they're older. But mind you, she's probably getting to the age now where the roles are drying up for older women.
You're right. Because she's 30.
Yeah, she's past it.
The young ones need to come up. Yeah, you're right.
What was surprising to me is that Bringing Up Baby, which is considered these days as a stone cold comedy classic, was actually a box office flop.
Yeah, that's weird.
And she says it's because at that time she was labelled as poison. That film, so what made me laugh about it, because you know it's got the leopard in it.
Yeah, I have seen that film. It's great.
Brilliant. It's so good. But she said that she didn't have the brains to be scared of the leopard.
Yeah.
And she was just happy to be on set with it. One day it took a swipe at her and the producers were like, right, we can't have the leopard near her anymore. But she said Cary Grant was so scared of it. She said that one day in his dressing room, they had a stuffed leopard to take some shots with. They dropped it through the air vent in his dressing room. She said she'd never seen anyone move so fast. It seems really mean, but I thought that was very funny.
Yeah, it's great.
So she is flopping, really, for a run of quite a few films.
She does. And she actually goes back to Broadway to do the Philadelphia Story, which she was in control of.
I did not know that this started as a play.
It started as a play and Howard Hughes bought it for her. He bought her the film rights. I mean, what I did not know, and this comes up quite a bit, is that she was really involved in the business of cinema. And she was buying properties and then buying treatments and then selling them to the studios. She had a lot of control. I
think that was only happening, though, like at this stage
in her
life.
It was at this stage, around then.
So she's becoming box office poison. The studios aren't hiring her. So now she's creating her own work. Yeah, she's taking control. And this is where her best stuff is happening.
Yeah, it really is. Because that Philadelphia Story was the beginning of the legendary films. She actually cast Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant. They were her choices. I think all three of them won Academy Awards.
I don't think Cary Grant did. James Stewart definitely did.
James Stewart. They all got nominated. George Cukor directing. Yeah, it was a hit on Broadway. And then, so it's great.
Yeah, it revived her film career, right?
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
And then you go into that golden era now.
Yeah, Alice Adams, Sylvia Scarlett with Cary Grant, Mary of Scotland. John Ford directed that. Yeah, all good, all good. And then Stage Door with Lucille Ball and Ginger Rogers and Ann Miller. That was really cool. And in fact, she was so good in that, the billing was Ginger Rogers first. But after the previews, they realised she was stand out great in it. And so she got top billing. So they switched it over. That's nothing to do with her either. Mm-hmm. Woman of the Year is a classic, Spencer Tracy. And that's the first time they met.
Oh, the whole bit in the book. I begin to talk about Spencer Tracy now.
Might as well.
I found it really hard to read. And I think she found it hard to write about because she starts mentioning him. And then at the end, when she started talking about him, she says, you're going to have to wait a bit longer to find out about Spencer Tracy.
She leaves it right till the end of the book.
And then right in the end, she didn't. Do you know, I found it really hard to read.
Yeah, I bet you're right. I bet she just literally couldn't write it.
Yeah. I just found it so odd that, like, he was married, she wasn't. She never wanted to marry him. It's a defining relationship of her life. They were together for what,
27 years.
Yeah.
It's the love of her life.
Yeah, he was older than her, and he was like an alcoholic, right? Yeah. And effectively, she gave up her career for a long period to look after him. Yeah. But then they would still work together. They made about 8 films together.
Yeah, they did.
What's weird about how she writes about him, it's not like overly cloying or gushing or anything.
It's full of so much love and respect.
Yeah. And I just got it. It really hit me hard in the heart. And I just almost disconnected myself to read it because I know what's coming, obviously. Yeah. He dies. Yeah. I just thought this is a real relationship. Well, always say you have to get married and have kids and stuff, but actually...
It's a real love story.
Yeah. I mean, she ends the book with a letter to him, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I was quite curious because I always, through that Lauren Bacall book, knew they were together. They weren't married, so... Maybe they were just friends. I wasn't completely sure if they were just friends or together. And it turns out that he was married and he was very Catholic. They had 2 kids and he'd left the marriage and had this huge guilt about it and then fallen in love with her. And he couldn't divorce his wife because of his Catholic guilt. And he was drinking because he left his wife and kids. And that was the problem. That was his burden. And so they lived together. But I think they had their own houses and they came and went and spent most of the time together. But it was never public. It was never admitted. She says when he died, she really does describe sleeping on the floor next to his bed, and then finding he just made a cup of tea at 3 a.m. and dropped down dead, and her holding him. And it's really, really personal. It's amazing how much she tells us, actually. And then she says when she spoke to his wife about it, his wife said, I always thought you were just a rumour.
Yeah.
Because they'd come to the house to be with him when they'd laid him out on a bed. They were sort of looking around going, oh, wow, they really live together. And in 27 years, if his wife didn't know, how's the public going to know? And that's probably why they were always at Bogey and Bacall. They couldn't go out to restaurants, go to parties. They had to keep it secret, even from Hollywood, even though everyone probably knew.
Yeah, they'd done like 8 films together.
But they couldn't do the public life because of the wife.
And she probably wouldn't want to do the public life anyway. No, they were
probably quite private anyway.
Like, I think Katharine Hepburn is not like a publicity-seeking Hollywood actress. No. Like, if she wanted to, she'd have done it.
Yeah, but 27 years for your wife to think you were just a rumour.
Yeah.
That's quite a feat, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, of all this, it does show that they were quite private people.
Oh, do you know what? Now, I know that Katharine Hepburn never did interviews and stuff. Now, over Christmas on YouTube, I've forgotten his name. There was a famous American talk show host in the 1970s. Goddamn, is it Dick Cavett? Something like that?
Yeah.
He asked Katharine Hepburn, like, you never do videos. Will you please come on my chat show? And she was a bit reluctant to do it. So he said, just drop by the studio, and let's have a chat. And I think they just finished filming, so everything was set up. And in comes Katharine Hepburn, just like in her coat and her boots and stuff. And the video starts with her walking around the studio with Dick Cavett. And she kind of agrees to do it. And she says, well, let's just do it now.
Right.
And he's not ready.
Oh.
And he's like, no, you come back tomorrow and we'll do it properly. She said, no, let's just do it now. And she just sits down in the chair with her hair all up in a bun, in her coat and boots. And then he just interviews her for about an hour. And it's brilliant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I need to watch that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Because she is brilliant. And that voice as well, though.
I know. She's really cool.
I could listen to her all day long.
Yeah.
So she's rattling along now. She's got to the stage where I think she can always make films. She's a respected older actress and she does like The African Queen, which I didn't know was the only film that Humphrey Bogart won an Oscar for. Oh,
right. Oh, by the way, The African Queen, she doesn't really talk about it because she mentions that she wrote a separate book all about it. And I read that some years ago. And it's absolutely brilliant. And if we had time, because it's not proper autobiography, if we had time just in our spare time as a bit of fun to read that, which we don't. But if anybody's interested, it's a brilliant account of this absolutely insane time when they're all in Africa and John Huston's going off shooting elephants and crap and taking bogey with him. Humphrey Bogart and John Huston are drinking like fish, and they're the only ones who didn't get dysentery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because and then there's a point where like thousands of ants, this whole darkness descends on the earth, and they have to run from the ants. And the ants literally just go over everywhere they've been and eat it all up. And then there's the boat sinks. They have to build another one. It's just absolutely insane and really, really interesting. She describes it all. It's actually almost as insightful as this book again. Okay. So it's just as a tangent reading project. It's really good.
So African Queen, Long Day's Journey into Night, Lion in Winter, absolute classic. So she wins like 3 of her 4 Oscars in this later period of her filmmaking life. Yeah. And On Golden Pond, of course. Which is
with Jane Fonda.
Which we know because we read
Fonda.
Jane Fonda's book.
Yes.
And she talks about Katharine Hepburn a lot.
Yeah, they both tell the same story about the dive, because Jane Fonda has to do a backwards dive and she can't do it, whereas Katharine Hepburn's an amazing diver.
And Jane Fonda did not want to let herself down in front of Katharine Hepburn because I think they booked a stunt diver to do it for her. And she's like, I can't be seen to have a stunt diver in front of Katharine Hepburn. So she practices and practices, And
she says she really torments Jane about it. She's like, oh, if you can't do it, I'll do it.
So she continues, like, as well as acting in these films, she's producing as well, isn't she? There's that film that she comes to England to do called The Corn is Green.
Oh, and, it's got Toya in it.
Well, isn't that surprising that she talks about this young actress called Toya Wilcox?
And also there's like 2 pictures of her in the book, 2.
Yeah. If anybody in America doesn't know Toya Wilcox, she basically became a pop punk in 1980 with bright orange hair But she began as a proper serious little actress.
Didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, little she is.
I just loved hearing Katharine Hepburn talk so highly about Toya Wilcox.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's our 80s music, pop music, colliding with old Hollywood legends. It's just such a weird mix.
They had so many problems on that film, and I love the fact that there were 2 other period films being made at the same time in London, and they'd gone to the costume store, and there were no costumes.
Yes, they had to have everything made. And I love that Katharine Hepburn is traipsing around Welsh mining villages trying to find a location. It's amazing.
So I love that even at this late stage in her career, where she could just be relaxing with a gin and tonic and waiting for the phone to ring, actually she's more hands-on than she's ever been, and she's making films, every aspect of making a film. It's because she loves the craft and she loves the industry,
and she's a worker.
And she's still hungry at the age of whatever. And she kept going until she was 96,
and she was bicycling up that hill because she wouldn't have a double do something she couldn't do.
Hey, we read another book. Was it Elton John, where they were staying at somebody's house and they said all of a sudden Katharine Hepburn came cycling up the drive?
Oh, yeah.
She wanted to use a swimming pool.
Yeah, that's right.
Whose book was that?
It was Elton John,
was I'm sure. It? Yeah. We've read too many books now.
I know.
It's hard to piece them all together.
Yeah, so it's a good one. You do get to know her. You feel you know her. She's let you in.
Yeah, as frustrating as this book could be to read, I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I enjoy her and I enjoy her films. And she's, like I said at the beginning, I just like that she never conformed, actually.
Yeah.
Even when people didn't like her, she never changed. And, you know, the book is called Me, and you said it's a very me book. That's who she is.
Yeah.
Everything's on her terms, and I think that needs to be applauded, right? Oh, there we go. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. We're new to this and you could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.